So welcome and thank you for coming to Journaling to Create Space. Many of you know my name is Meryl Cook, and I'm going to cover lots of things about journaling today. And at the end, we'll have time for some questions. So I'm a fiber artist and a writer, and I live in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and I work from my home overlooking the Halifax Harbor. So this photo, these are my tools. Basically a good latte or a cup of tea, a paper and journal, and a nice pen. And my mediums are rug hooking, spinning, wet felting, and writing. And recently, this weekend, I had an opportunity to try out a continuous warp triangle loom. And I'm so excited about that. And so probably I'm going to be adding weaving to my list of mediums at some point. So journaling and rug hooking really saved my life. I started writing in a journal in 2016 after finishing treatment for breast cancer. I had made the decision to leave my 20-year practice as a homeopath. I wanted to leave time and space to fully heal. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do going forward. So I sat down to write in my journal and hook at my frame every day. They were my ways of holding space for myself, the hooking and writing in the journal. And so in a period of 8 months, I filled 5 journals and designed and hooked 7 healing mats. And what I found was the more I wrote and sketched, the more ideas flowed and the more design ideas I had. I developed a new method of design and wrote my first book, One Loop at a Time, a story of rug hooking, healing, and creativity. So one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was teaching and speaking about creativity and about getting unblocked. I worked with groups and individuals and even took my journaling and rug hooking into corporate boardrooms. Through my writing, my artwork, speaking and workshops, I now work to inspire others to find joy and a sense of purpose. And it all started with a decision to sit down to journal and hook every day, to allow space for the future to emerge, and to make sure I took the time to fully heal. So why journaling to create space? That's what I called this webinar. And really, with this webinar, I was hoping to create and attract people who, first of all, are ready to change things up. Maybe you want to find a different way of being and would like to get started with a journaling practice that is sustainable. Maybe you've tried journaling before and it hasn't stuck. So this is one of the things I'll be covering. And also a journaling practice that's unlike anything you've tried before. Maybe you'd like a process that will help you to get unblocked and to tap into your own inner wild self, or to find your voice and be wild with purpose. If you have a pen or pencil and some paper handy, I'm going to share 2 writing prompts. We won't take the time to work today on these prompts, so don't worry if you don't have the materials, because you can watch a rerun of this webinar. I'm recording it today. This is a photo of me and my journal at Lawrencetown Beach in Nova Scotia. Or maybe that's Rainbow Haven. I think it's Rainbow Haven. So why journal? First of all, a journal is a great place for dreaming wildly. Letting your pen move freely and writing in your journal can help to open up creativity, and it's a bit like limbering up. And just like having a great conversation with a friend can inspire you and help you to sort through ideas, writing in your journal can be like having a conversation with yourself, where you're free to try new ideas and explore different concepts. Most of my business ideas and decisions, and even my personal life decisions, start in my journal. I write them down and think, well, what if I did it this way? Or what if I did it that way? So it can be a great place to try out new ideas. And a journal doesn't have to be just about writing. In my journal, I incorporate many simple sketches. Other people use journals to post favorite photos or swatches of color. And you may have seen daily stitch journals on social media. If you haven't, look them up. They're really terrific. A journal can be a great source of design ideas. That's certainly where every one of my designs begins, is with my journal. As an artist, my journal is where my designs begin. I sketch and write in my journal and often use phrases from the journal as part of the design. The mat shown here is called Love Letter. Following my treatment for breast cancer, I had a scar that I was not happy with. I knew that if I wanted to fully heal, I needed to make friends with this scar. So I was writing it love letters in my journal. And then at some point, I took a phrase from my journal that said, I let go of the pain of this scar and accept it lovingly into my body, because that's what I felt I needed to do. And that's the phrase that inspired the design. I thought about what it would look like or feel like to accept something lovingly into my body. And to me, it felt like a mother's embrace. And you can see that embrace on the right side of the design in the green and pink. So that's where the design began. And as I drew, I realized it looked like half a heart. And so I drew the other side to become the heart. I left the bottom open because I wanted to let go of the pain. I didn't want to keep it in my heart. So this was the first of my designs where I wrote a phrase from my journal on the linen around the design. And now going forward, these phrases act as sort of a meditation while I'm hooking. So today we're going to talk about why journal. We just covered this briefly, and I'll talk a bit more about it later. We're going to talk about something that I call tapping into the body feeling, and we'll end with dreaming wildly. I'm going to suggest ways to establish a regular journaling practice and how to keep it fresh. I'll leave you with an invitation to sign up for my Creating Space weekly prompts and a couple of journaling prompts you can try at home. I'm very happy to stay on at the end to answer any questions you may have. So as you may know, this session is being recorded and the recording will be available in a few days. So watch for it in your inbox. A warm-up exercise for my creativity workbook that I often share in my workshops is called Leaning into Joy. This exercise came out of a practice I developed while taking my daily walks to radiation treatment. I looked for 5 moments of joy on my way to the hospital. These moments might have been a child's smile, the color of a blooming rose, the way a bird soared over the harbor, and so on. And the second part of this exercise is to notice how your body feels when you're feeling joy. Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your heart, in your arms, in your gut? By connecting with the body feeling, I believe we are training our brain to look for and recognize joy. And that could be especially helpful during stressful or difficult times. So here's the prompt taken from my creativity workbook. What do you notice in the everyday that brings you joy? Where do you feel this in your body? And can you sketch the sensation of joy? Instead of just seeing a scene that brings you joy and drawing that, you can take it further. How does this joy feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And can you draw the feeling of joy? Noticing the world around you as you travel through your day can help you to be grounded. It also helps us to form a habit of looking for beauty instead of focusing on the negative. In my case, as I was walking to radiation, I was not feeling inspired or excited to be going there. And But I didn't want to focus on that. I really wanted to focus on something beautiful and something joyful as I prepared myself for this. And it's hard to have a dark thought when you're opening to a moment of joy. And I found this exercise to be extremely helpful during stressful times. And if you practice it as a way of journaling or a way of being, when you do have stress, it's a time that you can actually call on those moments so your body can recognize the feeling of joy. So here's my tip. I call this tapping into the body feeling, and really it's about connecting with the body feeling of a positive experience. It's one way to start getting unblocked, and the more we practice, the easier it gets. I know when I do the leaning into joy exercise in my workshops, some people find it very difficult to draw the feeling of joy as opposed to the objects that bring them joy. But once you start doing that, it becomes easier and easier. And many of my abstract rugs in particular are created by tapping into the body feeling of a particular experience. Yeah, so I would recommend it. So what we've been doing so far, we've talked about why journal, and we warmed up and flexed our creativity muscles by leaning into joy, and we've talked about tapping into the body feeling. So next, I'd like to talk about how to establish a regular journaling practice, or maybe just get started if you're just getting started with journaling. So I have a number of tips, and again, don't worry, this is being recorded. You don't need to write it all down. First of all, I suggest you buy a journal you love, ideally small enough to carry with you everywhere, and maybe even a special pen or marker that brings you joy to write and sketch with. It's really important to have beautiful tools, I think, in everything I do. The second suggestion I have is every time you get a minute, instead of scrolling through your phone, for example, write or sketch something. The next suggestion is leave the self-criticism or perfectionism at the door. Sketch and write as if no one is watching. I don't spend a lot of time writing about the negative stuff. I feel it needs to be acknowledged because if we don't acknowledge our negative feelings, they tend to fester and get buried somewhere and come out to bite us later. But I don't want to put my energy into all of the negative stuff. So my approach is to write or sketch a bit about a problem, but then to do what I call flip it. For example, these days, many people are worried about the economy and the prices increasing, etc. But I've chosen to focus on abundance. Each contract I get, I celebrate. Each mat that sells, I celebrate. Of course, I'm being careful with my finances, but I'm trying to view it as an opportunity to focus on what we really need, to focus on things like creating great meals for less money. Because one of the things that I believe, and that has proven true in my experience anyway, is that what we focus on, we attract. So a journal can be a great place for writing about possibilities and what you want to have happen in your life, as opposed to, in the past, my journals had always been just my doom and gloom, and I would only write in times of crisis. And now I feel that that I only do that in a limited way. Another suggestion is take yourself on artist dates. An artist date can be a day at the beach, a coffee at a shop on your way to work, or a ride on the ferry to the gallery. Be sure to take your journal and spend some time writing and sketching. Another suggestion is leave your journal out so that it's always accessible. I often write if I wake at night, and before I head to bed, I make a note of where my journal and a pen are. I have a whole series of pages in my journal called Wide Awake on Harbor Drive. I write in my sunroom by the light of the streetlights and the moon, so some of it is pretty messy. And occasionally I get up and I realize that the pen I was writing with had run out of ink, so I have a blank page. So those are some of my suggestions. I'd also like to review why journal. So how can journaling help? As I've said before, a journal is a great place for dreaming wildly. And doing something like letting your pen move freely and writing in your journal can help to open creativity. It's a bit like limbering up. Someone asked me the other day about, what if I have nothing to say? What if I have nothing to write? Well, in my experience, I will actually go to the page and I will say, I can't think of a lot to write today. And then I'll start writing about that. Or I might start writing about how does it feel to be blocked or to have no ideas. And what I find is the more I just keep my pen moving and keep writing whatever comes into my mind, things start to flow and suddenly I have things to say. And sometimes those things are quite surprising. And also, just like having a great conversation with a friend can inspire you and help you sort through ideas, writing in your journal can be like having a conversation with yourself. In your journal, you're free to try new ideas and explore different concepts. As well, writing in a journal can be a great way to put out the energy into the world that you would like to attract. And speaking of putting out into the world the energy we'd like to attract, this next exercise does just that. This exercise is called What If? And it's basically an exercise, another one in two parts. So it's try writing and then sketching 2 or 3 of your wildest dreams in the form of what ifs. So often in our culture, we think of what if as, what if something terrible would happen? But in this case, it's what if something really marvelous could happen? So we write 2 or 3 dreams in the form of what ifs and then connect to the body feeling. What would my body feel like if this dream came true? So the 2 components are dream wildly and connect to body feeling. And I find that my experience has been that when I dream wildly in my journal on a regular basis, things start to happen. Some of the things that I write in my journal actually start to come true. So for example, I first learned this exercise from Sherry Fitch, the author, and she did the writing what ifs, and she suggested to think of 2 or 3 possibilities a day for a period of a month, and just write wild dreams, what ifs. And then I've added to that, what would my body feel like? I really wanted to add the body feeling. And so in my early what ifs, I wrote things like, what if I could write a book? Or what if I could be invited to speak? Or those kinds of things. And they all started happening. So it's not that everything I write about comes true, but it is also, again, about putting that energy out there. So I just want to talk about what we've accomplished today. We talked about why journal. We limbered up with leaning into joy and discussed tapping into the body feeling with that. We talked about how to establish a regular journaling practice or just get started. And then the last thing I covered was an exercise I call what ifs and dreaming wildly. And it's I highly recommend, if you're starting journaling, to try doing that for a period of time. Maybe it's a week for you, maybe it's 6 months, but just see what opens up for you and see if you can start tapping into the body feeling of marvelous things happening. So the last thing I'd like you to think about is, what are your next steps in terms of journaling? If you love these prompts and you'd like some support in using journaling and sketching for opening up creativity or for making time for self-care, consider signing up for my free Creating Space weekly prompts. They're going to be starting, I'm restarting them tomorrow, and you can find out more about it on my website, or the link is on the slide here. And each week I'll send you a writing, sketching prompt, and you can share your response to the prompt with me directly by hitting reply. And if you find you need more help, or you'd like some individual time with me, there are options to book time with me. So I hope that that you'll consider signing up, and tomorrow is the first day of my weekly prompts being relaunched as Creating Space. So yeah, you'd all be welcome. So thanks again for your interest in journaling. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, as you probably have gathered. And I'm available to stay on for a few minutes if there are any questions. Otherwise, no obligation, but thanks for coming and please keep in touch. So I'll just stop my screen sharing and we can do some questions if people would like. Hello, welcome. Does anyone have a question?